From my story to your story, let's talk about grief. I will share my own grief journey, along with interviewing others about their path of sorrow and healing. I hope that you, the listener, will hear something that helps as you navigate your own grief, and that God will be glorified along the way. This content is meant as a discussion and not to give professional help. Let's get started.
Troy was 7 when he came into our home, and I remembered him, like I did the others. He was had big brown eyes and full of life, and it was not an easy time for us or for him. He would do things to see how far he could, how far he could go, or how far our love would stretch, or that kind of thing. And it took him a while to get over that. I did talk to a doctor later on, and he said that once a person has decided that's what they're going to do, that they sometimes call the people they love and make things right, and then they go ahead with what they had planned to do. And I think that's what he did.
That's fine, Anna, if you're watching on YouTube, to like and subscribe. If you are listening on the podcast, please like and follow. We would love for you to do that now to help our channel grow and become a blessing to others.
One of the deaths in your life that was your own son, and they say, anybody who has lost parents, spouse, child, says that by far the child is the hardest. I don't know that. I hope I don't have to know that anytime in my lifetime. But I think in addition to that, we're going to talk about suicide because of how he died. So there's a lot to unpack and talk about in this. But first, I just want you to tell me about Troy and how you came about he was adopted. So
yes.
Just tell me your story about how you came about him even being in your life.
Okay. Troy was 7 when he came into our home, and I've always heard, and I agree, that the first 5 years are so important. Troy thought he was in his own home. When he was 5, I taught kindergarten. He was one of my students, and I remembered him, like I did the others. He was had big brown eyes and full of life, and he was a good student. After that first year of kindergarten, my husband and I got married, and we were gone for the summer for his work. And when we came back to school, and I had my class and all, and I was talking to some people, and they said that Troy was not there that year, and I asked why. And Troy had been in a home, and he did not know that he was not in his real parents' home.
Okay.
Someone had fostered him. It was someone that knew his mother, and the mother could not take care of him. And they had said, well, we'll take him and we'll see if things can get straightened out, that type of thing. And it never did. And then there was a situation in the home that he was in, and they decided they couldn't keep him. And so the foster father took him. We lived in North Carolina. He took him to a Christian home in South Carolina, and told him on his way down there that he was not his father, and that this was not his mother, and sort of told him the story of how he got him. And he took him and left him down there, and he had to be left for a year according to the way the documents were. I don't understand it, but he had to be there for a year.
This was in a children's home,
in the children's
basically.
home, yes. So it troubled me. My husband was not in the school the first year, so he did not know him. But I asked him if he would take me to South Carolina to see him. I told myself that I just wanted to make sure that he was okay, that he was, if he was happy, I would be happy. And we went and we saw him, and he was glad to see us. And I talked to the director and said, how's he doing? And he said, not well. He said a child that's been in a home, in a family situation, does not do well when he's taken out and put into a,
I guess,
even if it's a Christian children's
Yeah,
home.
I guess so, because you're jerked out of that family unit, and he was told nothing he thought was accurate was accurate.
Right. Well, he had to remain there at the end of the year. So we talked to the person that had put him there, and at the end of the year we wanted to know what was going to happen, and he said, well, he couldn't take him back. Things were not so that he could take him. And he said, but you can keep him, you can foster him, and you can see how things go, and if I can come back and get him, I will. So we went with that, and we kept him, and we quickly realized that things were not going to work out any other way, and so we talked about it. We decided we wanted to adopt him. So
you were young, because you said you had just gotten married. You taught him, so I mean, you're young to be a mom.
I was in high school when he was born.
Okay,
yeah. I was a young mom, and we were newly married. But my husband was he felt the way I did when he found out how I felt about him, and he met Troy and everything. So we took him, and we decided to adopt him, and that wasn't easy. There was an adoption already. The person that had him had started an adoption procedure.
Oh, okay.
So we had to go back and, I guess, rescind, go back and start all over again. Troy was really anxious then to know, and he would ask me every month, he'd say, am I adopted yet? And we tried to explain that it was a process. And with the social worker would come, they were supposed to come regularly. They came, I think, twice the whole time. He would sit outside the door to listen to hear what was going on. So he was very anxious about it. When Rob came along, he wanted a little brother or sister, but he was not sure that he was not going to be replaced. Ugh. And we tried to explain to him that he'd get to be a big brother. So he accepted Rob, and by the time Daddy came along, this is okay, we got 3 of us now. Aww. And he was 15 when Jennifer came along. And she had him wrapped right around her little finger.
I guess so.
She was really, but he was proud to be a big brother to his brothers and his little sister. So that part of it worked out well. It was not an easy time for us or for him. He would do things to see how far he could go, or how far our love would stretch, or that kind of thing. And it took him a while to get over that. One time he decided to run away from home, and Bob had already gone to work, and I called him and I said, I can't find Troy. So he came home, and there was the woods next to our house. Well, Troy had taken off in the woods, but he was hiding behind the trees, and Bob drove past him.
Knew where he was.
He drove past him, and he didn't see him. And so Troy came running back home and tried to get back home before his dad did, because he was afraid his dad wouldn't find him.
Oh.
So we talked about it later, and that's what he was doing to make sure that we would come and we would find him and take him home. But there were trials. He wasn't an easy child to deal with. He was the life of the party sometimes, so to speak. Mm-hmm. But sometimes he was depressed. Okay. And he would need a large amount of sleep. And we did find out later, we did meet his real sister. Okay. And we did find out later that there was this type of illness in the family. Okay. And that everything that we had told her about the depression and all, she was familiar with. Oh, okay. So he went through high school. Okay. He graduated from high school, and he always wanted to go in the Navy. Mm. So he went into the Navy, and he married his high school sweetheart. It's really his childhood sweetheart from way back. And she was in Virginia. They got together and they were married. And for a while, he seemed to be doing well. And he was in church, and his pastor called us. Well, he actually came home with him one weekend, and he told us that he was depressed and that it just seemed to come closer and closer together. So he called me one day, and he said, I just wanted, well, he visited, so, but he called me one day, and he said, I just wanted to call you and tell you I love you. And he told me, he said, now I'm going through some things, and he said, because he knew that we knew, he said, I'm going through some things, but I'm going to be all right. And he said, I will get, I will get through this. And he said, I just want you to know I love you. One time I told him I'd help him find his real mother if he wanted to. And his statement was, you're my mom.
Oh.
And he said again, he said, I just want you to know I love you and that you're the only mom I would ever want. And he said, and I'll be okay. So we got off the phone, and I remember, I think it was 2 days after that, I was at home and I was doing some things, and I just, I prayed and I said, Lord, I'm not real sure what's going on. I can't really help him. You're gonna have to help him. And I think it was his pastor told me that after the conversation that I had with him, he stopped talking.
Wow.
And he said, we thought that we could, help him and then we'd bring him home. He said, but he never rallied this time. So he called, the pastor called. I answered the telephone. He asked to speak with Bob, which was unusual.
Right.
That he told Bob that Troy had taken his own life and said he had gone into a period of depression and had taken his life. I did talk to a doctor later on, and he said that once a person has decided that that's what they're going to do, that they sometimes call the people they love and make things right,
Mm-hmm.
and then they go ahead with what they had planned to do. And I think that's what he did. I do remember feeling like, okay, Lord, I prayed. Is this the way you answer my prayer? 2 days later, my boy's gone. So I had a hard time with that.
Oh, I'm sure.
And
now, how old was he when this happened?
21.
And you were in Virginia at the time?
We were at Landmark.
And was he
He
to work like
he was in Norfolk.
in Norfolk, in Virginia? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm just trying to wrap my mind around where everybody was. Yes, it does sound like that phone call was to say goodbye, that he knew. And I have heard, multiple cases where
Right.
like that, where they're set up to say goodbye, even though you think they're okay. I mean, I would think in any suicide, when someone takes their own life, everyone around them hopes and thinks they're not really going to do it.
Right.
And
He had never mentioned it, so it wasn't like, that he had said, I'm going to do this. He had never
But they just knew about
that.
the depression.
But we knew about the depression.
Okay.
Just, that type of thing. But there is, suicide is a different kind of death, because there's, first of all, the Lord didn't call them home.
Right.
It was a decision that they made, and I had people ask me questions like, well, he couldn't have gone to heaven, if he killed himself. That's, and is that the
unpardonable? Some people call it an unpardonable sin.
The unpardonable sin. No,
I mean, murder's not an unpardonable sin. And you're taking your own
life.
Right.
It's wrong, but you're taking you're taking a life.
Right.
But it's your life. But I think that God knew what Troy was going through, and I have had people say, intimate, that he couldn't have gone to heaven, but. He went to the wilds when he was 14. He came home. He was so excited, and he said the first thing he said when he walked in the door was, "I got saved." Mm. Well, as far as I'm concerned,
that's right.
That's it.
He knew he'd gotten saved.
He had gotten saved, and he was. It's. I think it's it's not an understood thing. There's a stigma there.
Right.
And I went through being angry at him, because why would he do something like that? Someone has said that suicide is a permanent solution for a temporary problem.
Okay.
And if he could have gotten through this, he was young, and but I do feel like the Lord looked down and he said, okay, that's it. You can come home.
Right. And there's so many people, I think, that that don't understand, or I say that you'll understand it better than I will. Don't you feel like, you said there's a stigma that comes with it, and you're angry because you're thinking this person chose to leave me, and I wanted them here, so it's like they're rejecting you. But if you've ever talked to someone who has been suicidal or had suicidal thoughts, they're in such a different mental place that all they can think about is how awful their situation is and how much they want relief from it. And so rather than being able to rationalize and sit there and maybe think through what it will do to their family, it's actually a bigger thing in front of them in their mind and in their emotions to get relief from the situation they can't get relief from. And I don't know that for sure, but do you think that's part of what helps you grasp that later on and get, not through it, but just to where you're not constantly blaming yourself or thinking we should have done something different, or why did they reject me? You have to come to the place to realize that it's the battle in their own mind and heart, and it's not really aimed at you. I mean, most people don't commit, maybe some have, but most people don't commit suicide with the purpose of hurting someone or getting back at someone. Right. It's their own.
Right. They want to end what they're going through right then.
Right.
And I think, someone even used the word, what a waste. His life wasn't wasted. No, there were many things in his life that have, even his death, that have touched people. That, and I know Jamie said, Pastor James, excuse me.
No, you call him Jamie, I call him Jamie.
He's always been Jamie.
Exactly.
He was mentioning that some things, that's just a moment in time. We can't judge a person by one day or, 1 week. This is a moment in time. And I'm sorry that moment happened.
Right.
But I'm very thankful for him and for all the good things and for lessons that I know that other teenagers and other young adults got from him.
And the way God used his life even and in what happened. And I think that, I can't say that enough, and I've mentioned that in several things. Just not letting that one terrible moment define their whole life. And Kathy mentioned that in a video about not letting dementia, that time frame, define who her mother was, or obviously talking about death. But I think even too, whatever the situation, when someone has a past where maybe their sin, they've had to pay for it publicly, or whatever, even like we see the people all throughout scriptures, they're like David and the things that he did, that he was involved in a planned murder. He was involved in, taking someone else's wife and the things, but yet God records so much for us, and he was even allowed to write, books that are included in the scripture and teaching us that it's not that moment that is what their whole life was about. So I think it's so important to help you and to help others who are living with situations after something as serious as suicide, is to think of the other parts of their life too, and not let that moment be all that they're about or all they're known for, or especially in your own heart and mind. What do you think? I mean, obviously it's thinking back and guessing, but how much do you think the fact that, well, first of all, you said there were things in his family line that you found out later that contributed to perhaps, being depressed. physical, like that it was physical. Or I don't know what is the term I'm trying to say. Not just that it's physical, but that it's part of what they are actually predisposition to, to battle depression. We know that you can get depression from a circumstance, but you can also deal with depression because it's genetic or because things are off in the body, that kind of thing. So how much do you think, just even those early years of him being shuffled around or not really, being told we're not really your family, how much do you think those kinds of things probably played into him never
a great
really?
deal.
Okay.
I really do. I think it was a great deal. I think he had been rejected, and there were more rejection, and I think he had a coach one time that when he was playing sports, and the coach came to me and he said, "Who's that kid think he is?" And I said, because probably some show-off thing or something, but his expression to me was, "Who's that kid think he is?" And I said, "Nobody." I said, "That's why you're having so much trouble with him, because he thinks he's nobody and he's trying to prove he's somebody."
Right.
And so,
I think that was a good example too when you said sometimes he would act out for the sole purpose of seeing what it would take to see if you all would reject him, like he was testing it, or to see how deep your love was. And there's also that phrase, some people go through areas in their life when any kind of attention is better than no attention, even if they have to act out to get it, which is important to remember when people are doing that, of what the reasons behind it may have been. What were some of the things that, you said you dealt some with anger afterwards, and how you got through carrying, I know you still carry it, you still miss him, but how you got through that time frame of, I'm sure there was anger, there's probably, like you said, a stigma where you even if people aren't saying things or the wrong things, you're probably thinking everybody's looking at you a certain way.
I felt like that for a while. I think what I did was to pour myself into my other children.
Okay.
And I remember Jennifer asking this. She adored her big brother, and she asked me one time, she was a tree climber, and she asked me, and she said, "Mama, was Troy wrong to take his life?" She said, "That's a sin, right?" And I said, and I was surprised at the way she was thinking, and I said, "Yes, that's a sin." And she said, "But if I climb a tree and I fall down and I die, that's not a sin, right?" She was thinking that she missed her big brother, and if something happened to her, but it wasn't a sin, it would be okay. But it really almost scared me, because her thinking was deep, maybe for a 5 or 6 year old, but that she was reasoning within herself, and I don't know what brought it on. I don't know whether someone had said something to her, or what it was, but it was just, that's what I've noticed about my children and my grandchildren and your children, that they think deeper than we think they do. Right. And things affect them deeper than we think it does. So.
That's wisely said, because I think it's so important that we actually talk to them and let them open up and see what's on their heart and mind. So I think a lot of times they're holding it in, or don't have an avenue to express it, aren't sure if they should express it. I guess that would lead me to ask you too, how did you tell your kids? How old were they? What did you tell them? What was appropriate to tell them? How did you navigate that with children?
We had the boys come right after them, because we wanted them to know before somebody else did. We didn't tell Jennifer right away, but we did before she went back to school. We explained, but with Rob and Dan, they were old enough. They were junior high and later elementary, Dan was. So we explained to them they did know that Troy was having some problems. They
Okay.
had seen him in the home before when things would happen, and they did know that there was some problems. But he had been out of the home for 3 years, and we did explain to them what happened. And Troy was supposed to come home and help Rob with some soccer. That was their thing between the two of them, and that didn't happen. And Rob mentioned it, that he was supposed to come home. But then Rob said, well, I sure do hope an angel came down to help him get to heaven.
Oh, wow.
And I looked at him and he said, because he sure couldn't find his way by himself. He had a terrible sense of direction, and we joked about it.
I love it.
And it was, and we all sat there and laughed.
Yes,
and
you have to.
It was just so, like I said, our children are so much more perceptive than we are.
Mm-hmm.
But then it was kind of like they accepted it.
Okay.
Because they had to.
Right.
So
Right.
Jenny was a little bit different. She went back to school. We told her before she went. Well, we told her before the funeral and all that. But when she went back to school, I remember she came home the first day and she said, "My teacher said," and she was in her first grade landmark. She said, "My teacher said that they're all going to help me get through this."
Oh, wow.
And that was such a big thing, to her.
Yes.
So.
And good that that's hard to know. Like the kids come back to school. What do I say? How much do I say? So that's important for people to understand that just going ahead and acknowledging it
right.
and being there for them is important. So I guess in closing to something dealing specifically with the difference in a death, first of all of a child, but then also suicide. What would you say to a parent out there who has experienced this, maybe even recently or however long, and is wrestling with the things that are different about it, the different aspects of it? What would you tell them or reassure them or remind them that concerning the death of a loved one through suicide, or anyone? It wouldn't even have to be someone's child, but a loved one who took their own life and you've got to live with the aftermath of that. What would you...
I think to focus, especially if the child was saved, to focus on that part of the life and the good things, and to remember that whatever caused the suicide, that it wasn't a permanent thing, and that Troy had 21 years, and I don't want to remember one day and not think of the 21 years that he was given. I would say more to the people that are dealing with people that have had suicide in their life, to be careful what you say to them.
Good point.
To tell them that you love them and you're praying for them.
Okay.
But I know that when people will ask me, and I went through a hard time with this, when people would ask me how many children I had, I would say 4. And then, well, how old are they? And, and it always came around to the fact that Troy had died.
Okay.
And because there's no way of getting around that. And then, well, how did he die? And,
And then I have to answer that question because yes.
Right, but it just, and then I suicide, and then it makes them uncomfortable.
Sure.
So sometimes just, now if someone asks me how many children I have, I usually say 3 here and 1 in heaven,
Right.
So that answers the question, but I do know that it's awkward for people. And when you say your child died of suicide, then they either don't want to say anything or they want to know, all the details, which I'm not really ready to stand there and talk to somebody for half an hour about.
So probably not good to ask details, but yet it's not good to just act like Oh, well, what's the weather today?
Right,
Switch the topic and not acknowledge it, or not say, I'm so sorry that you went through something this horrific.
Yes, I agree with that.
Okay.
But you don't need to know the details.
Right.
I guess that's what I'm trying to say.
That's a good point, because our human nature thrives on that, like news media kind of, oh, tell me that. And we don't, and you're right, we don't need it. And it takes effort to think that way, like to make sure that we realize, okay, I don't need to know this. It's not benefiting me, and I certainly don't need to put this person through.
But some people, if the person feels like talking about it, listen.
Sure.
But I'm not the kind of person that usually feels like talking about it. So that's the difference to it.
So to respect that and how you ask it, and that's good advice.
I think it's good to say to anybody that's gone through that, I'm sorry for your loss and I'm praying for you.
Good.
I mean, that's what people need to know, need to hear.
It's good advice. That is what we hear, because sometimes we just blurt out the wrong thing. Mm-hmm. I've even, since Don died, I'll blurt out something to someone, and then I've just gotten where I honestly correct myself. I'm sorry. I'll say, how are you, or whatever, and I'm thinking, I know how you are. I don't know why I just said that, and you don't have to answer that right now. I just want you to know I love you and I'm praying for you, and I'll just acknowledge, I'm really sorry that I even just said it in a question form right now, like you need to stand there and answer it, But I know most people, maybe some do, most people don't mean any harm, and they're just trying to check on you. But you're right, sometimes it's beneficial to hear what people go through, what they wish you'd say or not say, and kind of prepare yourself before you speak to someone of what you'll say or not say in that situation.
And it depends on the person too, the personality of the person. Maybe they want to talk about it. Maybe that's going to help them.
Sure.
So I think you sort of have to feel your way.
Feel that out, see what they want to do. Well, I know the Lord's been your rock. You've been quite the testimony through all of that, and I appreciate your help on how you dealt with that at the time, and are even still dealing with it today, I'm sure. So thanks for sharing that.
We appreciate you joining us today at Speak Your Grief with Sonia. Connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, or YouTube, as new episodes are added weekly. Thank you again for joining us as we unpack our grief. We hope you have been reminded that you are not alone in this journey.